examining the story behind the song Curse of the Ninth, aka Old Ways 2. The song begins just like the first, Old Ways.
Finding new ways in my old ways, finding bad decisions in a new stage. Could've picked them, but it chose me.
But this time the story seems less widely subjective and more concentrated on a certain situation, seemingly between the singer and a girl.
Let me tell you a story, one that I'm sure that you forget. Met a really nice lady, but you think you get guessed the rest.
The singer shifts his tone here, drawing the listener in as though he were sitting beside them at a campfire. It's less performance, more confession. He begins unraveling the story of a woman he once believed was worth every ounce of effort. A figure who embodied the promise of healing and fulfillment. Through his words, we glimpse not only his devotion, but also the fragile hope of a future built on unconditional love. A future he desperately longed to secure with her.
I would give her my everything long as she just comes correct. But I question her thinking, I just hope I can make it better.
The singer then pivots toward a more introspective lens, reflecting on his own journey of self-repair. This is captured in the lyric, "Mending all these pages, I just hope she'll do the same."
Now I'm in all these pages, I just hope she'll do the same. I guess she think that I'm joking, I ain't playing a single game.
A striking metaphor that equates his personal growth and healing to the act of rewriting a damaged book. Here, he acknowledges his own flaws and the self-destructive tendencies that threaten to sabotage the relationship. Yet there's a plea for reciprocity, that she, too, will confront her own wounds so their bond can survive. From there, he expands the vision, speaking openly of long-term commitment, marriage, a shared life, and the hope of a brighter, more stable future.
Trying to give her the best so she can take half my name. Trying to find out what to do so she can believe what I said.
But as the song progresses, the optimism begins to unravel. The lyrics foreshadow a darker resignation, as if the singer has accepted a cruel inevitability, that life has stacked the deck against him in matters of love.
'Cause my love is real, but it's the cards life deals. It's not okay anymore, 'cause it's forget how I feel.
We hear both defiance and despair. The line functions as a confession of authenticity. His love is genuine, yet it is simultaneously an admission of powerlessness. The metaphor of the cards life deals underscores his belief that external forces and toxic encounters have marked him as a perennial victim in relationships. The instruction to "forget how I feel" almost echoes the cold voices of society, partners, or even his own inner critic, reducing his pain to something invalid or disposable. At this point, the singer begins to expose the fractures in what initially appeared to be a hopeful and redemptive connection. The repetition in
Still I'm trying and trying and trying and trying again.
conveys both determination and exhaustion. A man caught in a loop of effort that feels increasingly futile. In contrast, the counterpoint
Still she fighting and fighting and fighting to get me to quit.
creates a push and pull dynamic that frames the relationship as a battleground rather than a partnership. The subsequent confession
Overthinking, assuming, not listening to what I said. Now I see why I'm losing, I'm not the person that she meant to see.
highlights the destructive cycle of miscommunication. Here, the singer reveals the tragic irony. His sincerity is met with skepticism, and her projections begin to overwrite his reality. The woman, once imagined as a symbol of renewal and unconditional love, now becomes the very force that undermines his efforts. She assumes the worst of him, misinterprets his words, and reshapes him into someone he never claimed to be. Yet, even within this unraveling, there is persistence. His repeated attempts to make her believe in his truth illustrate a desperate clinging to the hope that the relationship can still be salvaged. Thematically, this passage illustrates the painful collapse of trust, how even genuine emotion can be suffocated by doubt, suspicion, and the inability to truly hear one another. Much like in the earlier track, Old Ways, the singer once again foreshadows a slow descent into mental spiraling, an unraveling brought on by the collision of hope and disillusionment. In the line,
What did I do? Now I sound like you. It's not okay to fool myself that it would ever be true.
we hear a moment of stark self-awareness. The speaker not only recognizes the unhealthy dynamics of the relationship, but also acknowledges how he has begun to mirror the very patterns he once criticized in her. This lyric becomes a turning point. It's the painful realization that his persistence may not be resilience, but denial. By admitting it's not okay to fool myself, we hear a moment of stark self-awareness. He confronts the possibility that his longing for connection has blinded him to the truth, that the relationship may never manifest into what he envisioned. Yet despite this awareness, he continues to invest himself in the woman, driven by a stubborn hope that effort and devotion might overcome the weight of miscommunication and mistrust.
So explain to me how you would deal with it if it happened to you. You got different ways of coping, but what's left for me to choose? Look who's the victim, look who was left, look who she picked, though I'm just success.
As the song progresses, the veneer of resilience begins to crumble, revealing the singer's insecurities in sharper detail. The emotional turmoil functions like a fracture, crushing open a once sturdy shield, exposing vulnerabilities he has long tried to suppress. The narrative shifts into a darker register here, less reflective and more confrontational, as the singer begins to pose direct questions, almost as though he is addressing the woman face to face. In the lyric,
So explain to me how you would deal with it if it happened to you. You got different ways of coping, but what's left for me to choose? Look who's the victim, look who was left, look who she picked, though I'm just success.
we see a dual tension at play. On one hand, the singer recognizes the gulf between his and her coping mechanisms. Hers, presumably destructive or escapist, hinting at substances, versus his, channeled into expression and creation. The very song we are hearing, on the other hand, the lyric drips with resentment and resignation. The accusatory tone
Look who's the victim, look who was left.
points to his perception that she positions herself as the wronged party, while he is relegated to the margins. The devastating line
I'm just success.
crystallizes his deepest fear, that he is disposable, replaceable, and ultimately of little value in the lives of those he loves. It's not only a commentary on this one relationship, but on a larger, repeating pattern in his life. One where he feels perpetually overlooked or discarded, despite the depth of his effort and sincerity. The song here becomes less about her and more about his fractured self-image, exposing the raw wound of perceived worthlessness. The lyric,
Who am I to fall back every time? I think it's okay for myself that everything will be fine.
pushes us deeper into the paradox of the singer's insecurities. Here, he casts himself not as a partner of choice, but as a contingency, a safety net women turn to only when their desired relationships collapse. It's a devastating self-portrait, one that reduces his worth to that of a backup plan, rather than someone genuinely valued for who he is. Yet, even within this bleak self-assessment, a thread of fragile optimism lingers. The line,
I think it's okay for myself that everything will be fine,
reflects the singer's conflicted resolve, a conscious awareness of delusion paired with an almost desperate need to cling to it. It is both survival mechanism and self-sabotage, a way of keeping hope alive in a reality that constantly undermines his value. This moment encapsulates one of the song's central tensions, the collision between brutal clarity and the refusal to let go of belief. The singer knows the truth of his position, but he chooses to live within the illusion, illustrating the painful human tendency to embrace denial as a shield against despair.
you won't listen to me, but you'll listen to them. Tell me who will hold you down longer. You talk like it is something you need, but can't reciprocate it. I'm sorry, who talk like they claim it, who now?
At this stage, the song undergoes a tonal shift. Anger replaces quiet resignation. The singer's delivery sharpens, his voice carrying more force and urgency, almost as though we are hearing him mid-argument rather than in quiet reflection. This shift in expression underscores the rawness of his frustration, making the listener feel the intensity of emotions boiling over. The lyric,
You won't listen to me, but you'll listen to them. Tell me who will hold you down longer.
captures his exasperation with her misplaced trust. Instead of valuing his sincerity, she defers to outside voices, whether toxic friends, destructive habits, or the nagging voice of her own overthinking and assumptions. This creates a striking irony. The person offering her genuine commitment is ignored in favor of influences that erode the very bond she claimed to desire. His anger finds further justification in the biting question.
I'm sorry, who talk like they claim it, who now?
This line reveals that it was not the singer who initially sought out the relationship, but her, making her inability to reciprocate all the more infuriating. And
You talk like it is something you need, but can't reciprocate it.
he lays bare the heart of his grievance. She articulated a need for love and stability, but never extended that same depth of affection back to him, despite his constant attempts to prove himself. Here, the song's narrative pivots from introspection to confrontation. What began as a lament of self-doubt and misplaced hope evolves into an indictment of betrayal and hypocrisy, where the singer no longer internalizes blame, but directs it outward, holding her accountable for the contradictions between her words and her actions. The singer then returns to the recurring refrain.
Cause my love is real, but it's the cards life deals. It's not okay anymore. They say forget how I feel.
The repetition of this line functions almost like a thesis statement, anchoring the emotional core of the song. Each time it appears, its weight deepens. What began as a vulnerable admission now resonates with a sharper, more bitter edge in the wake of his anger. The singer then moves into specific examples, illustrating the small yet pivotal conflicts that chipped away at the relationship. In the line,
Said she overthink about the post, so I try my best to change. What really made her overthink was the assumption she became.
we see his instinct to accommodate. Rather than dismissing her anxieties, he immediately adjusts his behavior, attempting to create a sense of safety and comfort for her. Yet, the tragic irony lies in the revelation that her distress was less about tangible actions and more about the assumptions she allowed to take root. Projections of insecurity that no effort on his part could truly resolve. The production mirrors this emotional instability. The instrumental rises and falls like water approaching a boil, swelling in intensity, then momentarily calming, only to surge again with greater force. This sonic movement personifies the singer's inner turbulence, capturing the volatility of an unresolved argument spiraling out of control. When he erupts with,
So I'm constantly thinking about how this would make her feel. Little did I know it wouldn't matter in the end.
his voice transforms from confession to outcry. The delivery is screamed, raw, and cathartic, matched by the swelling of the instrumentation, as if the song itself is cracking under the weight of his frustration. Here, his anger finds its sharpest articulation. All of his adjustments, compromises, and efforts were ultimately dismissed, leaving him to conclude that nothing he did would have ever been enough.
Finding new ways in my old ways. Finding bad decisions in a new stage.
The narrative then circles back to its origins, reintroducing the opening motif of the Old Ways series. Its return is significant, acting as both a callback and a revelation. Where it first appeared as a foreshadowing of decline, here it takes on heavier weight, signaling that the destructive cycles he tried to escape have resurfaced, reshaping themselves in new contexts. The singer acknowledges that despite efforts to move forward, he continues to confront familiar patterns of self-sabotage, disappointment, and mistrust. With conviction, he follows this with the striking line,
This is what you wanted, not a safe place. Return to my old ways so you can save face.
In this moment, his frustration crystallizes into accusation. He frames the collapse of the relationship not as a product of his shortcomings alone, but as the result of her desire to protect appearances rather than pursue authenticity. The safe place he once tried to build with her is rejected, and instead, he is pushed back into the destructive behaviors, the old ways that he fought so hard to escape. This verse functions as a devastating commentary on cycles, the inevitability of falling back into familiar pain when love is poisoned by distrust, performance, and false pretenses. By reviving the old ways refrain at this late point in the song, the singer forces the listener to confront the tragic full circle of the narrative, as hope gives way to relapse and resignation.
You know what you want, you know what you want to. You know what you want, you know who it come through. You don't see what's wrong, you never see what you'll do. Tell them all what I did, not what you made me do.
At this point, the singer's performance erupts into its most visceral state. His voice multiplies with a near-divine force, an overwhelming blend of conviction and rage that rises above the instrumental, which swells in parallel intensity. The delivery transforms from wounded reflection into a godlike outpouring of judgment, as though he is no longer just singing about the conflict, but channeling the fury of its truth. The barrage of lines,
You know what you want, you know what you want to. You know what you want, you know who it come through. You don't see what's wrong, you never see what you'll do. Tell them all what I did, not what you made me do.
strikes with the cadence of an accusation hurled mid-argument. The repetition of "you know" builds like a hammering mantra, exposing the hypocrisy at the heart of her actions. She is portrayed as someone fully aware of her desires, yet unwilling to take accountability, quick to shift blame and rewrite the narrative to protect her own image. The subsequent lines,
I'll give it all away. The disappointment I feel, I wish for better days. I should've known it'd be like this, I turn away. The benefit of the doubt has a killer blade.
serve as both a confession and a lament. Here, the singer confronts the crushing regret of his devotion, admitting the pain of misplaced trust. The phrase, "benefit of the doubt," is particularly telling. What began as compassion and belief in her potential has now become the very weapon that undid him, a fatal flaw in his resolve. The woman's narcissistic tendencies, her blindness to her own faults, and negligence of the singer's feelings. The singer finally voices the depth of betrayal and disappointment that has haunted the narrative from the beginning. The singer then recounts the main message of the song.
Cause my love is real, but it's the cards life deals. It's not okay anymore. They say forget how I feel.
It is here that the song erupts into its most volatile and cathartic moment, the ultimate peak of intensity.
Finding new ways, in my own ways, running bad decisions in a new stage. I admit this, it just shows me it's passing too fast and it grows me.
The singer's multiplied voice returns with the old ways signature lines, but now delivered with even greater conviction, almost weaponized against the woman at the center of his narrative. The production mirrors this escalation. Rock instrumentation crashes into the arrangement. Adding weight and urgency, transforming the track from wounded lament into a full-blown explosion of rage and confrontation. The shouted verse,
Instead of changing, you'd rather remove yourself. This world is changing, do you think that you'll be left? You lied in my face, thought you'd keep your innocence. Now you're the victim and I guess I help with that.
captures the rawest form of accusation. He frames her not only as dishonest, but willfully resistant to growth, someone who abandons responsibility rather than embracing change. The biting irony of, "Now you're the victim and I guess I helped with that," suggests a deep resentment. His effort to help her heal has instead been twisted into further evidence of her supposed victimhood. The following lines intensify this eruption into almost unrelenting fury.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days straight. You thought you could just do that and not be the same. How did you do this to me when I was wishing all the best for you?
The counting cadence gives the delivery a percussive urgency, emphasizing the relentlessness of her actions and the accumulating weight of his frustration. The anger crystallizes in, "Being dry with me like you don't want me here, so poof, you're through." A rejection that flips the dynamic, allowing him, at least momentarily, to reclaim agency in a relationship defined by imbalance. The climax culminates in the devastating accusation.
Giving you just what you wanted from the start is sabotage. Cause you don't know how to treat a man, a bullet, I just died.
Here his tone shifts from pained confusion to finality. By labeling her actions as sabotage, he reframes the entire relationship not as a tragic misalignment, but as something deliberately undermined from the beginning. And in calling himself a bullet I just dodged, he delivers the final twist. What once felt like unbearable loss is reimagined as liberation, a violent yet necessary escape from a cycle of destruction. This moment marks the definitive breaking point of the track, the rage-fueled climax where the singer abandons denial, embraces confrontation, and finally begins to sever the emotional ties that bound him.
Oh, maybe I'm not the one. Another one will come through. They give me exactly what you're looking for. You give them exactly what I hope for. You give them all of that and then more. I've seen this act before.
After the eruption of rage and conviction, the song shifts dramatically in tone. The singer's voice softens, the fury giving way to despair, as if the weight of his own outburst leaves him emptied. In the lines,
Oh, maybe I'm not the one, but another one will come through. They give me exactly what you're looking for. You give them exactly what I hope for. You give them all of that and then more. I've seen this act before.
we hear resignation take center stage. No longer yelling, he instead laments, his anger dissolving back into the familiar insecurities that haunt him throughout the track. Here, the singer frames himself once again as disposable, imagining that the love and effort he longed for will inevitably be given to someone else. The bitterness of "I've seen this act before" suggests a painful repetition, a cycle of being overlooked and replaced, reinforcing the theme of worthlessness that has threaded the song from its earliest verses. The descent continues in the plaintive refrain,
Oh, it's just not fair. Oh, it's just not fair.
This simple line captures the essence of his defeat. Stripped of metaphor and fury, it reads as pure lament, a cry of injustice that underlines the futility of all his efforts. It's a return to vulnerability, but now filtered through exhaustion, as though he no longer has the strength to fight for understanding or validation. This transition marks the aftermath of the emotional climax, the crash that follows the explosion, where the singer is left alone with nothing but his insecurities, regrets, and the quiet echo of unfairness.
Cause my love is real, but it's the cards life deals. It's not okay anymore, next they forget how I feel.
As the track nears its conclusion, the instrumental undergoes a subtle but poignant transformation, borrowing from the sonic palette of the singer's earlier work, A Never Again Story. The percussion, particularly the kick drum, emerges with a steady, heartbeat-like rhythm. At first, the sound represents connection, echoing the intimacy the singer once believed in. But as the progression continues, the rhythm fractures. One heartbeat doubles while the other lags behind, sonically illustrating the imbalance between them. His love persisting, while hers fades into dissonance. This clever rhythmic divergence externalizes the emotional distance that words alone could not fully capture. The heartbeat fades, leaving only emptiness, a devastating but fitting conclusion.